It's Ashley.
And Alex.
And today is episode number 3.
3 as the Germans would do it, right?
Yeah.
The Germans will get it.
So today,
what are we talking about for episode 3, Ash?
We are going to be talking about Tar.
Tar. Why Tar?
Just because it's a movie that's on the Oscar nominations list.
What did it get nominated for?
So they're actually nominated for Best Picture, and Cate Blanchett is nominated for Best Actress in Leading Role. The Oscar nominations inspired us to start a new series, actually, that we wanted to talk about, called Our Road to the Oscars, which is just following us on our journey of watching all these Oscar-nominated films and talking about them and reviewing them.
We're just over a month out, maybe a month and a half before.
Yeah, March, what was it?
12th, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
We mentioned it last time. But it'll be the Sunday as usual, and
we thought we'd watch a few nominated films together.
Yes.
Which I think
so
is a good
Tar
idea.
will be, and then in this video, along with Tar, we'll talk about a second film, which we'll get to.
Which will be a surprise.
Okay, Tar.
Tar. Let's talk about Tar.
Let's talk.
Okay, so Tar is directed by Todd Fields.
Yes.
It just came out October 2022.
Yes.
Just to give a brief summary of what this film is about, it starts off introducing us to Lydia Tarr, who is a world-renowned composer-conductor. The movie starts off with a scene where she's interviewed, and this interviewer reads out how successful this woman is.
All her credentials.
Accomplishments and achievements.
Which feels like a big exposition dump.
Even the first few shots in the beginning is showing her suits being tailored and very personalized.
Yes.
That already goes to show you what kind of person this woman is, right?
Right. There's a minute before she goes on stage and just her whole preparation, and when her assistant walks up behind her, she knows, that her whole routine of the perfume and the way she touches her left ear. You pointed out a lot.
Yeah.
You noticed that a lot.
Yeah, there's little
So she's
things
definitely particular and in a position of power and control.
Yeah, and then it kind of goes and takes us through the journey of this character and how we watch her downfall, pretty much. Right?
Her downfall. Yeah,
and
the story.
Her abuse of power and how controlling she is.
Yes.
So, giving that summary, let's get started into talking about this film. So, I wanted to ask you, what was the biggest thing that stood out for you in this film?
Going into it, only hearing of Cate Blanchett's performance, it's all true, locked into it the whole time. It reminded me of how Daniel Day-Lewis played a Taylor in Phantom Menace. Not Phantom Menace, that's a Star Wars movie.
Phantom Thread.
Phantom Thread, excuse me. And I completely believed him in that profession. The same goes for Cate Blanchett in this. You completely believe she's a conductor who speaks German, who's in the position that she's in, that she's a teacher, all that. What stood out to me, though, was the commentary it had for cancel culture. Yeah, pretty much how that is a big topic in the modern day. Lydia Tarr is not a real character.
Which I thought she was, actually. I got into this thinking she was actually a real person, but then having to look it up after she's not real. But so they did a good job with making it so believable.
And yes, as we mentioned, it's an in-depth character study of this person who needs to be in control. She is not a product of her environment, but her environment ends up being a product of her through her control and position. And I just thought it was a fascinating character study, which she has a big arc because it ends in her downfall, essentially. She will get to the end, how she has a new kind of future ahead of her. You could, I don't think you would want to call it a pleasant rebirth or anything like that. It's very, she loses all control essentially, which is what was the most important thing to her. So that's what I took away from it, is it's modern commentary and just how great of a character study it was for a non-real person.
Yeah, I liked how it's, I mean, after watching it, I was kind of like, oh, this is a success story in reverse, right? Okay, good. So then with that, let's talk about Lydia Tarr, the actual character, because I since it is a character study movie.
Yes.
Let's go into depth about that.
Lydia Tarr. So, and kind of with the previous point of it being a reverse success story, in the beginning, you kind of admire her because she's so in control and such a powerful woman.
So confident. I love
so confident, and her demeanor, the way she speaks. You even mentioned, and you'll get into it more, but how the way she speaks and carries her hand gestures, obviously it's very reflective of what she does as a profession, being a conductor. But you mentioned she was almost like dancing, or it was like music, the way she was.
That's like one of the main things I've noticed as soon as the movie started, because it starts off with her being interviewed and she's talking about music or the position of a composer conductor, and how she is in control of time, right? Like she has that control. So that already automatically shows you that she's a lover of power, right? How she has that ability. And then, yeah, throughout, she's just using a lot of her hand movements, and she almost talks in an up and down way. It made me think of like her studying the character and how to act that character is by using a movement in her conversations or the way she speaks, right? And so I like that. It like ties the whole theme and what do you call it? Just like the theme of music into it, right?
Yes.
She's incorporating that in her acting. Yeah, it was so well done.
I'm sorry, I know that's more to do with the performance, but I think it says a lot about the character and that sense of power. So I wanted to touch on that, but I'm sure you'll expand on it.
Let's talk about the scene after the interview.
Yeah, she's teaching the class.
Yeah, in the classroom.
I think that's it's a long scene. I don't know if there was a one take in there.
It looked like there was almost a one take, but
it was, sometimes one takes are distracting because you see they're very purposeful, like we're doing a one take, and this wasn't that. You were so transfixed on her, and the supporting role of the student was good as well. He was like shaking his leg, and you think that's probably real because you're going toe to toe with Cate Blanchett. But I think that was a very good. That scene encapsulates more or less the main themes and topics of the movie.
I think it was also the start of her destruction of self.
Which it turns out later. Well, yes.
Right? It was already like that. Because can I just say, it just went from this powerful, confident, successful woman, like being as another woman, like being attracted to that because of how powerful she was. So I was admiring her character. And then right away going into a scene that shows kind of like what you're, like it's an overshadow of the rest of the film, right?
Right.
But
you could see the conflict.
I wanted to say, starting. Like, with that student shaking his leg, like, you can tell, like, yeah, to be in front of this successful woman, you're nervous, right? Like, this person that has so much credentials to them, right? But then and then it goes into this argument, this, like, dance between the two of them, and then it's him walking away from her. So I thought that was, like, an overshadow of the rest of the movie that you're going to watch.
Immediately, you get that sense, as you said, that how they feel towards her. They're intimidated. She puts him on the spot. And so this student, this male, is a pansgender student who makes the point that Bach's music isn't his thing because Bach as a person has some
personal issues.
Well, they called him a misogynist. They mentioned something about
20 kids.
20 kids. They don't specifically mention, but the student can't seem to get past that, and she even refers to it as his allergy, because he's not separating the artist from the artist, the art from the artist, which she thinks that's very not fair. She says about Bach that Bach had humility. He didn't pretend to know all. He instead wanted to raise the question to the audience and listeners, not have the answer. And she thinks that's more important, raising the question rather than just giving the answer. So he wasn't pretending to be all-knowing, but with such a powerful artist and creator, she says along the lines that you have to just face him, and then you'll be overwhelmed by his compositions.
So with that scene, how do you think that scene was important in the film, and how is it relevant to today's controversial topics?
Well, it directly parallels with the character of Lydia Tarr, separating the art from the artist. As we come to find out, and I love how the movie doesn't deliberately show her relationships with current or former students, but it hints at it. Yeah, there was none of that. Or the control, like you know she's controlling, but it doesn't show her scandals or her manipulating or sabotaging, besides some emails that you get a view of with the prior student.
I feel like a lot of her control was shown through the other characters.
Yes.
And how they behave around her.
How they talk about her, and how they react around her. I agree.
And so I kind of wanted to bring out that the things left unsaid,
Mm-hmm.
Things like Krista Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
even what even happened to Francesca, right? Like,
right.
That whole situation, because the thing is, this movie briefly talks about things, but never to its depth. And so you never really know the true story.
No hard answers.
What do you think of that?
Yes. I think her daughter is its own relationship, which we'll get to, but there's 4 women who you could really make up what her world is. She has her current partner, her
name's Sharon.
Yes, and they're partners, and Sharon admits to knowing and understanding a lot about Lydia and how she goes about things, and there's a lot of things she could push to the side, sweep under the rug. Then you have the new cellist, Olga, who I think through that relationship you see Lydia's clear infatuation with her, and that hints to
almost to understanding Krista Taylor, right? It's like almost a new relationship that she's moved on from Krista Taylor.
And I think that gives just enough hint that she probably has had these kinds of relationships before, and she's probably abused her power and rising them up if she gets something sexual or romantic out of it. Olga, despite all that,
is almost this character that it's a character that almost defeats her, or I guess you could say defeats her.
And what I think I understood is Olga was the one filming her from the beginning. That clip you see of her, there's these kind of live feed, like FaceTime
Instagram videos
of
I don't know if it's Tar. Instagram, but it's some kind of copy
of Tar at all.
It's also Olga is a character that you see isn't intimidated by Lydia Tarr, which is a cool contrast because everybody else is kind of intimidated by her.
She's not very proper. There's that scene in the restaurant where she's eating like a slob. She's kind of informal. She's very young. She doesn't even know who conducted one of her...
Or the record of the symphony she heard.
Correct. She just says, it's on YouTube, and that's what got me noticed. But I think that was also a great commentary on today's generation. Just we not needing to know all the information is out there first. Yet we're not ones to read everything and kind of memorize it as prior generations.
Right. So she also talks about the millennials being robots.
Lydia Tarr says robots more than any other word and
it's like
it's
something
always
she despises.
and it's always other people. We're gonna go back to that because in the
We
end,
will.
she becomes the robot.
Remember, we say that.
We mentioned the two. Then there's Kristen Taylor.
Krista Taylor.
So this former student or colleague ends up committing suicide, and through emails and discussion, you understand that Lydia Tarr did not recommend her for
Pretty
the
much
orchestra.
destroyed her life.
Destroyed her life.
Destroyed.
Not clear if she had a romantic relationship with this character.
You don't even know what happened between the two. You just know
No.
that the three of them, her, Lydia Tarr, Francesca, and Krista Taylor, were all very close. And then one day there's something happens. We don't know what happens. But there is a separation between Krista Taylor and Lydia Tarr. And then you see, so through all these emails and things, you see that Lydia Tarr, I'm mixing the two.
Yeah.
Lydia Tarr pretty much destroys Krista Taylor's reputation by not recommending her to, and obviously Lydia Tarr has that power, right? Because she's this woman full of credentials. So yeah, you don't see that throughout the film.
The fourth and final female character who she interacts with most is her assistant, Francesca.
But she ends up disappearing.
Well, after Lydia Tarr tells her, I can't recommend you or pick you up for that position of co-conductor. She
Interesting.
She runs away, and their relationship is left kind of ambiguous because you could clearly see Francesca is always keeping an eye on her naturally as her assistant, but
It almost
there's more
looks like
than
she
that.
has a crush on her too.
And they probably have had some relations, but Tar, doesn't give her that attention that she needs back, and there's a great distance between them.
You almost, you kind of question Francesca's role as whether or not she wants to be with her romantically or what her reason is.
She is with her romantically, but she's using it to her advantage, or at least trying to, gain the promotion, which she doesn't end up getting. She leaves.
Her intentions weren't romantic. It was just to get promoted.
Yeah.
Right? You see that in the end.
Yes. Going back to your question, though, on talking about the unknown, things that they're shown maybe, but not exactly
And why do
described.
you think that they are left mysterious to the audience?
So I think there's this big theme of spirituality.
Okay.
And elements of ghosts, which is there all throughout, but it's never directly explained.
Well, it's not a ghost movie.
It's not a ghost movie,
It
but
almost has that feel of a ghost movie.
Lydia Tarr is haunted by something clearly, and I'm gonna touch on the visual nature of the movie. The tones, very gray. Even her home that she shares with Sharon, it's concrete walls. It feels like Lydia Tarr has boxed herself in. Where I said the environment is a product of her, I feel like her relationships with people have caused her to be boxed in to her own subconscious, and that's why we get a lot of scenes of her while she's trying to compose music, while she's going on runs, and she hears sounds which really make her uncomfortable, and the anxiety is built. Her paranoia, I think it's reflective of her potential guilt for things she thinks she knows she's done. And she hears a distant girl screaming during her run.
They never actually show what happened.
And what did you tell me that distant girl screaming was from one movie?
So that scream is actually taken from the Blair Witch Project.
Josh, is that you down there?
To conclude with the things left unsaid,
Yes.
I wanted to ask whether this movie is made for an audience to love the character or despise.
I think I left.
How is there an understanding
I don't
of her?
despise her. I believe she lives in a time where she got exposed for things that are wrong that she does. The way she interacts with people, her control, her manipulation. I think she did do wrong. Do I dismiss her and what she's achieved? No. I am not of that belief.
You're someone who separates the art from the artist.
I do. And it's important to be educated, right? We know that without learning history, we're doomed to repeat it. People, just like the color of, the most neutral color of this movie I saw was gray. I think
it's a gray area.
I think it's a gray area. I think all people are gray. We're all guilty. And in her position, being so under the spotlight and analyzed, it is much more easier for her to become exposed and have such a great downfall. And I think that's what made it good drama for a movie. But I don't dismiss her.
So this was perfect to lead to the next topic I wanted to talk about, was Petra the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Why include Petra?
Well, I think her partner Sharon had the one quote near the end where she says, Petra, your daughter, is the only non-transactional relationship you've had. It's a product of her. We're not even clear on the relationship she had with the man prior. We don't even know for sure if it's her daughter. Maybe it's Sharon's daughter.
I think it's an adopted daughter.
Because it doesn't look like either of them.
Right.
And just to make a quick connection to the spirituality, early on we find out Petra's being bullied at school and both parents are concerned for her. Lydia Tarr, as she would, takes the initiative, goes to the school to pick up Petra.
Drop her off,
and then she confronts this young girl, okay, who can't even be 10. And, you know, she even levels with her squats, but she says in German, I had to look this up after, she said, God watches us all and I will get you. I thought that was very interesting. What did you think about Petra? And why do you think they had her in this movie?
Well, just thinking of character analysis, I think it was added to help complicate the character. If you were to make a character all about power, it's not likable. With all the relationships she has or had in the film, adding the daughter brings out a softer side of her, a side that's more relatable. She's still got love and care in her.
And it gave her more to lose in the end.
Yeah, that's true.
There was more imagery I wanted to touch on with her daughter. She comes home and I believe, Lydia's mother is there and she's told Petra to put her things in order. Petra says, she told me to put my toys in order, but I already have. And Lydia says, I can see that. And I thought that was interesting how she's looking at her kind of not clearly through the curtain, but she's saying she could understand her life being in order. And it's like Lydia's trying to keep everything in order. And in the end, the film ends with her being the conductor for this really obscure kind of...
It looks like it's almost like a video game.
Something
show.
like that, but everyone's dressed up in big costumes and it's...
Like a Comic-Con or something like that?
It has nothing to do with what she's used to, right?
Or her whole belief throughout the movie of music being like, or her being in control of the music.
Yes. They give her headphones to put on, and from my understanding, it's keeping her there in time, where before she had liberation from controlling time and manipulating the symphony, where she loses all that power. So I think that was a small, not explained detail, but that was very telling of her losing complete control, and now she's
becoming the robot.
And
that's how it ends.
And we loved it. Cate Blanchett was fantastic. Between her and Michelle Yeoh, again, we didn't watch all the other performances, but I wanted to ask you about what notes you took from her acting and how does it compare to Michelle Yeoh's performance?
Honestly, I think Cate Blanchett will win because her performance was so well prepared for. It was so believable, like you said, especially having to learn German. First of all, she had to learn German. play the piano, because those shots of her playing the piano are real. Even though they do say that she has played the piano when she was younger, but she did go back into it for this film. And then also learn the movements and the behavior of a conductor. And she did that. Like the passion, the energy that went into all of those movements, I thought was remarkable.
So that was Tar.
That was Tar.
Das gut, ja?
Is good, yeah.
Okay, good. So now we talk about the next movie, which is going to be kind of... So we talked about the new release, Oscar buzz, but we wanted to take it back. We watched these movies pretty much back to back. I thought they would have a similar feel and atmosphere. They both deal with music, where Tar is more about classical music, modern classical music. This movie touches more on folk music.
Inside
Llewyn Davis from 2013.
Directed by
the Coen brothers.
the Coen brothers.
And the film is written by them, of course. And you're basically following this character on like a small odyssey through his struggles in, early 1960s New York. This movie we won't delve into as much, but Ashley, what did you think about this movie, and how did it compare to the Coen brothers' library? Did you see that element of tragedy and humor throughout?
Yeah, definitely. So I like understanding the Coen brothers' style. I love that they're so specific and detailed with characters in their films, and this one was that. It pretty much a summary of what I would say to this film is it's about a sad man from start to finish. Just because you see it starts off with him performing in a small bar, and it's beautiful. The music right away touches you. I think his voice, the sound, the song, like everything was touching, and but you could see that he carries a gloominess throughout the film. So I would say that the character development throughout this film wasn't that much. There wasn't much of an arc. Maybe slightly towards the end. You do see that.
Well, the end is the beginning.
It is, yeah. It repeats itself, but
Right.
that's why that's why I want to say like it's like a full circle film, just like how the Coen brothers tend to do that. But it like it's a repetition. You see the beginning again at the end, but you see that there's a little tiny uplift. There's a little tiny arc that the character gets a little better.
The ending is so great because, like you said, it comes back around to that. He's playing in a bar and he has an outburst, which causes him to get confronted outside, but not before he gets a glimpse of a young Bob Dylan who, true to life, this was the time in the early 60s where he took New York, that area, Greenwich Village, by storm, and playing in these small venues. And you just get a glimpse of him, not even like a name drop or anything. You know it's him with the harmonica and his look and his voice. Whoever played him, that was fantastic. I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. But Bob Dylan also represents an artist who, not from that point, but throughout his career, then on his long-lasting career, he was always changing and adapting, and he was never, confining into like the norms or what was popular. He was a very awkward guy. We've watched in some interviews, and Llewyn just doesn't have any of that.
But he carries so much pain, and he does express it through his art.
The performance is fantastic from Oscar Isaac. Yeah, in the end, he just ends up being a footnote in Bob Dylan's story. But to touch on what Ashley said, I think there's this one moment right at the end before it cuts to credits where he gets beat up in the alleyway behind the bar while Bob Dylan's performing. Earlier performer, his husband, beats him for making some heckling comments, and the man drives off in a taxi, and Oscar Isaac's character, Lewin, he turns around and he says au revoir. And I think that's maybe not the start of the rest of his life and how he's going to approach things, but for the first time he's kind of saying bye to his troubles in a way.
Yeah, because throughout the whole movie you just see him be this Debbie Downer character. And then so that, I want to say, like, in the end, you see that there's a little bit of hope in him to change. And so that's why incorporating that going out into the alley and then being punched is almost like that excuse you want to blame life again, right, for him. But so it's interesting that you just mentioned that, because that made me realize, because I was like, oh, like, is that ending supposed to show that, oh, he's going to go back into this cycle of being this Debbie Downer character? Or, yeah, I guess he says goodbye to that. Yeah. And you, as an audience, believe that he's going to change.
Hopefully, just so that he can make his life better. But he's a clear example of the amount of talented artists there are who don't get the recognition. They maybe come up, or actually don't come up, in a time where they're so close to someone else who becomes big. And again, it's the Coen brothers doing tragic comedy, really diving into one character.
It's them doing characters that are not success stories.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the Coen brothers.
It's so real.
It's so real.
Yeah.
There's much more of that in life than
we
a success story.
understand more of Lewin than we're so familiar with Bob Dylan, but even the way Bob Dylan in the movie is shot, it's almost like a mirage, right? There's a spotlight on him, but there's never a close-up. It's just the pass-by of Lewin seeing him. I think it's such a well-directed scene.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so overall, I really liked that film.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing me that.
Of course.
I think I'm going to go download the music right now.
Yeah.
Because it was so good.
And Please, Mr. Kennedy. Uh-oh. And I thought that song was great.
Outer
Space.
Outer? If you make her a widow.
Yeah,
I
it was
didn't
great.
know
Adam
Driver was in that. He looks so young.
Yeah.
So good.
Okay, well, this is going to be fun to edit.
That ends pretty much everything we wanted to talk about today. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think I rambled enough.
I think you did.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening once again. We are so grateful for your support and subscribing. So we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, give us a thumbs up as well.
Yeah, give us a thumbs up if
Ring
you like
the bell,
this video.
all that good stuff.
All that jazz.
We love you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. You're awesome.